consultative group where we have 2 CCRs here. And so we are here with Core and we are here with Central CCR, which I think is still a working title, isn't it? I'm not sure. But anyhow, for the Central CCR, we have a new chairman, and that's Harald Keuler. I want to introduce him to you today. Maybe Harald, you can say something as a first start off to introduce yourself, and then obviously we will catch up later in the agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Ruud. Yeah, welcome and hello everybody as well from my side. I have the pleasure of being here as the chairman of the new CCR Central. At least it's legally set in stone, so maybe it's a working title, but we will have to change it again to change the name of it. Yeah, and I'm happy to have you here as well for the Central CCR for the first consultative group meeting with you. Yeah, and we're happy to share some news about positive steps that we made, and it will come then further with the agenda.
Okay,
thank you, Ruud.
That's a nice bridge to the agenda. Well, the first point on the agenda will actually be Central CCR and steps we are making there, and actually the preview, the sneak preview of the public consultation of the day-ahead capacity calculation methodology that is up to come. Then we switch to Core. We give you an update of the overall program and the new developments. And then we have a specific part on day-ahead capacity calculations and the methodology and what's happening there. Long term is on the agenda, intraday, and we have some topics at the end that are based on questions we have received before the meeting. Is there anything somebody wants to mention or comment on the agenda? Then I propose to go to.
Good to mention still. Yeah. Also, well, welcome from my side. Good to mention that we received indeed a list of questions, and we will topic by topic switch to the AOB to catch up on the answers.
Yep.
And then see how we divide next steps. So don't be worried. The AOB is only 15 minutes at the end, but the questions will come throughout the session. And I looked it up meanwhile, and it's officially Central Europe. So we will make sure that next time it's the official title we use. That's PE.
At least the abbreviation was okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, Central Europe it is. And let's go to the Central Europe topic then on the agenda. Where we first have Harald to do the introduction of the current state of play.
Yeah, thank you, Ruud, and thank you for the clarification. And we have it on the top of the slide, so we didn't miss it completely. So it's of course Central Europe, but as we are in Europe, it was clear just to say it's the central one. Yeah, well, a bit of the background. Where do we come from? I think a lot of you will already know, but just to wrap it up, as we have here our first meeting together. Of course, there were some preceding negotiations, etc. But with the aim of increasing market efficiency, but also, of course, in the light of the energy transition and securing the system in its operational states, on 30th November. All TSOs handed in a proposal for a change of the CCR delineation, meaning how the capacity calculation regions are composed. And there were two major changes that are here relevant as well for our framework. One was the introduction of the Celtic interconnector and its introduction to Core. And the second one was the merging of the CCR Italy North and the region Core, where we're usually meeting here. On 19th March, so meaning end of Q1 of this year, ACER published then the decision, and this was approved. with these two changes. To be clear, the Celtic interconnector will be introduced to core before the merger happens. And then in a second step, the merger of core and Italy North is going to be introduced and made effective lastly in operations. And currently it's foreseen that this merger is being implemented stepwise. Current framework foresees that it's happening for the day ahead capacity calculation and market coupling timeframe. This is the first step. There is already an outlook that other steps should follow. But of course, the idea is not just to merge, but that it's really in a planned, scheduled manner. And of course, this takes some time to do it in a well thought out way. And this is to be performed in the next steps. But nonetheless, since March already, there was already some progress, and we are happy to be here today to show you this progress today, and also to, especially on a content level, to introduce you what we did since March. And this was especially regarding the day-ahead capacity calculation methodology. We came together, especially with Terna, and as the new part in this cooperation, meaning all core TSOs and Terna for Italy North came together and worked on the day-ahead capacity calculation methodology. And we are now at the status that we are short before entering the public consultation, and this fits perfectly together with the meeting today. We had yesterday a steering committee meeting where the launch of the public consultation, including the content, was approved. Of course, we still have to fine-tune and make it into appearance that it's well readable for you, and therefore will take some time to finalize, some days to finalize it, but we plan to publish it next week.
End of next week.
End of next week. Yeah, but nonetheless, today we want to present to you the main content, especially the main changes compared to the core day-ahead capacity calculation methodology, that it's easier to find yourself around here. Yeah, formal submission to the NRAs is planned mid of January. We are still on the schedule, so this was the original schedule. We are still on the schedule, and we are eager to keep it, and we hope to do so. And we have as well the support, of course, of our NRAs in the contentious discussions to move in the right direction forwards. What do we have still? Operational go live. Yeah, okay. This is something that we will mention as well, of course, according to the legal framework. Within the public consultation, currently it's foreseen mid of 27. But we have to put, of course, some caveat around it. We are together since March. We were strongly involved and heavily working on the methodology itself, and it will still take us some time to make a good evaluation how an implementation process can be implemented and how long it will take to have the system set up, etc. So we will still have to do some planning for this. Maybe we will have some changes still in the time schedule, but of course we will inform you about that. Saying that, this was the introduction. The next part will then go more into the details, of course, and this will then be done by one of our conveners of the day-ahead capacity calculation team, who is today online present, I guess. There was a hand raised.
Jérôme Lepage from Energy Traders Europe. Maybe a few questions around governance before we get into the topic. First, yeah, congrats on the appointment as chair. As we've noticed in other, like for instance, in the core CCG, there's co-chairing with market participants. So is that also foreseen for the central CCR? And is that kind of the same setup? There's a co-chairing with market participants as well?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We hadn't had a detailed discussion on that now, but I don't see the necessity to have a change in terms of not doing it in the manner that already proved being well for the past. So I'm happy to have it as well, co-chaired.
Yeah, the point is, of course, that there's a lot of interaction between the two. So also internally, we treat it sort of side by side. So like today, we have both on the agenda. I think from that perspective, we better keep it like this. And if there is a need to split it up at some point, then let's discuss it. But for the moment, I would propose to keep it together.
The one thing is how we organize it in terms of meetings. The other thing is maybe when we are co-chairing it. And I have assumed today we have a co-chair. But of course, we didn't officially elect or something like this. I'm happy to have Sally as well for Central. But if it's deemed relevant to discuss a change or to have a second one, fine for that as well. But as Ruud said, in terms of organizational framework, we will try to keep it as efficient as possible for you as well, to have all the topics together, to have a good overview, both on Central Europe and on core, together with Silly.
That's great. And maybe second question that's a bit theoretical, but like from what I understand of the Acer decision on the CCRs, so it looks like from now on, like we only have a central CCR, but there are some core methodologies that still continue.
Quite some core methodology.
And by the way, also Italy North methodologies.
That's true. So like how so we'll take this as a status quo kind of, but there's some questions in the market from certain participants around the sturdiness of the governance model, and that may not be a question for you, but maybe rather for Acer. But how safe that is for the stability of all the methodologies.
Yeah, you will see on the topics we have on the list here today. You will see already this interaction, and we make decisions on that. So it's in that perspective, I think let's be in discussion on this to find pragmatic solutions here. That would be our approach. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on the intro? Then Ferdinando Gianese is presenting the more content topics. Ferdinando, are you in the call?
Yes.
Good.
Can you hear me?
Perfectly. The floor is yours, Ferdinando.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone. So, just to start, an overview of all the topics that the CE day ahead CC project team and have been treated for the purpose of drafting the capacity calculation methodology. The first topic is the Switzerland inclusion. Just to give a first overview, but there are some slides, also other slides. The CETSOs assessed the preferred way forward for the inclusion of Switzerland in the CEDA, the capacity calculation. Of course, with the consideration that Swissgrid is not part of the single day-ahead coupling. So different concepts have been identified to have this inclusion. And also there are some requests for market participants that TSOs would like to receive regarding the explicit capacity allocation. But we can see this in one of the next slide. The second topic is the Italy Nord specific elements. Indeed, in the Italy Nord CCR, there are some lines that are not modeled in the CGM. And so to take into account the capacity of the not modeled lines, tie lines, a technical solution is proposed by the CETSOs, increasing the Fmax values on affected elements. And in particular, there are for not modeled tie lines between Italy and the border with Switzerland and Austria. The third topic is the interfaces between the day-ahead capacity calculation in Central Europe and the regional process that will continue. Regional process, I mean of course, the core and Italy Nord intraday capacity calculation. Here, TSOs are investigating the possibility of having a coordinated capacity calculation for either one process. A second point is the consideration of network elements during validation, in particular the 110 kilovolts. And in order to be consistent with the core intraday capacity calculation, also in the day-ahead Central Europe methodology, there will be this possibility. Another topic is the HVDC consideration. Indeed, in the core CCR, there is only one HVDC cable, the Allegro cable, while in the Italy Nord region, there is one cable between France and Italy called Pisa HVDC cable. And so in order to, in the light of this merging, of course, in order to take into account the peculiarities of both cable, a solution is found by the CTSOs to consider HVDC as a remedial action in the non-costly remedial action process and keep the evolved flow-based as stated in the core methodology. The last topic is the allocation constraints, in particular for Terna, that currently use allocation constraints and ramping constraints in the Italy Nord region and will continue to use in the new CCR. In the next slide, we will see in particular the HVDC consideration and the Switzerland inclusion. So, just to give, first of all, a background, CTSOs and the regulator are striving to have an integrated capacity calculation solution for the Switzerland and Switzerland inclusion in order to minimize the impact on capacities. Indeed, we have an inefficiency considering that Switzerland is not participating in the market coupling, and so different solutions are now assessed. In particular, the two options are the extraction of entities of Switzerland within its own borders, and the second option is the explicit day-ahead flow-based allocation on Switzerland borders. And both options require a principle to share capacity between Central Europe and Switzerland. Sorry, I hear some noise. Is there a question or?
Ok, todos não funcionaram, dá para logic, dá tudo.
There's somebody not muted. Yeah, okay, that's.
Oh, okay.
It was a mistake, Fernando.
No, okay. I think is there a question? Okay. So to continue, we would like to give also the guiding principle for the consideration of this Switzerland inclusion in the day-ahead capacity calculation methodology. Indeed, the same rights and responsibilities for Switzerland during the capacity calculation flow-based, including also the validation sub-process. The CCM will be functional even without this consideration. Of course, the EU methodology cannot impose rules on Swiss grid, and a separate agreement so is needed between the CTSOs and Swiss grid to have this cooperation.
Fernando,
In
there's a question from Jerome.
sorry. Yeah, thanks.
Does the chat work for everyone? Because we don't see questions in the chat. So if that doesn't work, you can indeed raise your hand.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Jerome, please.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Hello, yeah. Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, quick question first on this second option, the explicit direct flow-based allocation. Can you please elaborate a bit more on this?
Yes, I think there is a proper slide.
Or maybe you will go through it later.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, just to make sure I understand correctly the concept of explicit flow-based allocation.
Yes, there is a slide. I think number 9 with this. So I propose to go step by step. If it's fine for you. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So in general, the capacity calculation methodology allows for the 3 consideration to take into account the non-C bidding zone borders. One is the standard hybrid coupling. Then we have the advanced hybrid coupling only for countries included in the stack. And then we have the integrated technical counterparties. So going to the next slide, we can see in short an high-level explanation of the ENTSO-E approach. So this approach consisting in taking the full flow-based domain validated as a basis, and then extracting the ENTSO-E for the Switzerland borders. The parameterization of this extraction process shall be tested and defined during the implementation phase. Here we have the description of how the ENTSO-E is extracted. So we have the flow-based domain, of course determined for each market time unit. And this domain will serve as basis for the determination of Switzerland ENTSO-E borders. That are, of course, the input for the explicit day-ahead allocation for the Switzerland borders. Considering that from the flow-based domain, there could be an infinite set of choices of ENTSO-Es. The algorithm shall determine the ENTSO-E in a systematic way, starting from a predetermined point. And so here you have a description of how the ENTSO-E is extracted. So from the starting point, the remaining available margin of the pre-resolved CNEC have been adjusted to take into account this starting point, thanks to the positive PDF zone to zone. Then in the next slide we see how the RAM is adjusted thanks to the PDF, and then there is an iterative process to compute the ENTSO-E. So for each CNEC and the external constraints, the remaining available margin that are positively influenced is shared. Then from those share of RAM, the maximum bilateral exchanges are computed, dividing each share with the positive zone-to-zone PDF. And bilateral exchanges are updating with the addition of the minimum values of the oriented border. And so there is this iterative process to update the RAMs. And this iterative process will continue until the maximum value of overall constraints of the absolute difference between the margin of the iterations is smaller than a criterion. As I said before, the technical and parameterization of the extraction process will be defined in the implementation phase. The results of NTC are the maximum bilateral exchanges. And those, of course, after the algorithm execution, there will be some connects with no RAM left, RAM left that will be the constraints of the NTC computation. So this is the description of the NTC extraction. Then there will be the an high-level explanation of the explicit day-ahead flow-based allocation. So the second option we are speaking about.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah. Yes.
This is Jérôme Lepage again from Energy Traders Europe. In this first option, do you model the Swiss lines as connects in the flow-based domain, or is it like in a central flow-based domain without any consideration of the Swiss network?
Fernando, did you understand the question?
Like, are the Swiss connects part of the flow-based calculation?
Yeah. If I can, we have also some experts that I could give the floor, in particular, Willem.
Yeah.
If I can.
Fernando, maybe we can make it simple. It's yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No. It's of course if there are also other questions on this, of course
maybe
we can.
Because the background of the question is we are not doing that today in core, and we are not implementing, because we are on the tracking core of implementing a solution for the coordination between the core borders and the Swiss northern borders, and this is a different design around that borders. I think last year we explained the design around that, and here the starting point is indeed different. The intention is to, instead of having two separate processes, then we need to bring them together during a validation to try and see if we start from the common starting point, including the Swiss network elements, can we achieve an efficient solution to divide then the capacities across these borders, starting from one process and having the rules on how to divide the capacities. And that's a bit our message today, is that today we did not yet conclude exactly on how to do that. That is very much work in progress, and that will then come at a later point in time. When we have made a conclusion, then we need to formalize it back in the methodology. And one flavor that we are looking into is the NTC extraction that Fernando explained. And the other way is going to be flow-based allocation, and that will now be further on the table. And it's on that aspect specifically that we would like also to hear your feedback, because it does impact not only what we do, but also how the market structure works on the Swiss borders.
We have a second question.
Yeah, what about question on the NTC extraction? Is it an NTC extraction that is done only for the Swiss borders or for all Central Europe borders? And then we just keep the NTC of the Swiss borders?
Very intelligent question. Both options are part of the investigation.
Because if it's just the first one, which is only a TC extraction for the Swiss borders, then it would mean they would have the whole RAM for themselves in the first place, right? So
But the question is indeed, so I think what is one of the main questions with the extraction, or the main difficulties is, as you, for any NTC, I would say allocation, you have to define the capacity up front independently, if you do it independently or in a coordinated process, and therefore the share of the capacity of the CNECs and how to fairly share it is one of the key questions that still need investigation, because it's not a priority ex ante to be done in a wise way just with a simple concept. So there are some investigations still have to be made. It can be, one option could be just apply the same process to everybody, or just consider another way of fairly sharing the RUMs, so that this, what you now mentioned, does not happen at the end. This is clearly not the goal. Yeah.
well, if you extract it for all the borders at once with the standard algorithm, it is already like a fair share somehow, and then you would just take the Swiss NTCs and kind of drop all the other ones. So if I understand right, so they won't be used, the other ones.
Yeah, but it's of course one of the options that we are investigating further.
Okay.
Julius, you want to add to this?
Yeah, I just want to very clearly clarify that what you said, Olivier, it will not be a case where the Swiss capacities will be having access on the complete RUMs. There will be a fair split, full stop. This is definitely going to be the case. The way how to do that is open, but there will be a fair split to access the.
Further question?
Yeah, maybe just one quick question on my side. Arnaud from NG. The starting points that you write here on the top of this, is there still some discussion about what the starting point is? Is it the D2CF, or what is reflection on this starting points, the calculation?
It's the flow-based domain. So we are here at the end of the process. So we have calculated the flow-based domain, some validation has been taken place, and then we need to share. So starting point is the previous step of the calculation process. So it's indeed the domain that has been calculated based on the D2CF grid model for Central Europe.
Do we have online further questions? That's good. Ferdinando, please.
Yeah, thank you. So in this slide, we have the like a little bit the description of the explicit day-ahead flow-based allocation on Switzerland within zone borders. That is the other option for determining the capacities, consisting in bypassing the NTC extraction, submitting to the market allocation the flow-based domain. This domain is obtained splitting the remaining available margin of the CNECs in order to have two separate allocation. So the CE flow-based market coupling and the Switzerland explicit flow-based allocation. And the distribution of the capacity follows a sharing principle that will take into account the forecast market demand. And here we have a graphical example of the two domains. So starting from the flow-based domain, we have this extracted NTC domain for the Switzerland borders. And so the flow-based domain needs on Switzerland borders needs to be deducted from the entire C domain. While in an NTC extraction process, only the NTC needs to be deducted. In the next slide, we have an introduction to the explicit flow-based allocation. CETS also would like to highlight that, of course, the explicit flow-based allocation will require a change in the market design of the affected bidding borders that in explicit flow-based allocation regime, the cross-border capacities compete for the flows on the most critical branches. And the flow-based domain is constituted by a single set of PTDF, a zone-to-zone PTDF, and RAM for each MTU market time unit and per connect. So some changes, there will be with this solution some changes for the market participants, and during the auctioning process of the flow-based domain of flow-based or coordinated explicit auction, 3 steps can be defined. So TSOs inform JAO about the physical network parameters, and JAO then merge data and opens an auction. The market participants place their bids for capacity between any of the participating countries, and JAO conducts the clearing and notify bidders and TSOs about the outcome. And this approach was intended to be implemented in the CE, in the former CE day-ahead capacity calculation. In the next slide, we have a sort of summary of the differences between the 2 methods. Regarding the capacity calculation in the NTC-based allocation, we have to extract the NTC from the flow-based domain for the Switzerland borders, while with the explicit flow-based allocation, of course, there will be no NTC anymore. And so a subspace from the CE flow-based domain is reserved for the allocation on Switzerland borders. Regarding the market allocation, the status quo with the NTC-based approach is that it is independent allocation for the Switzerland border will continue to exist. While with the explicit flow-based allocation, there will be a redesign of the market. So one single allocation mechanism comprised of different borders direction, ensuring competition for the cross-zone capacities on all Switzerland borders. And the market participants can individually bid for any of the available borders and directions. Yeah, so in the next slide, there are some questions that CTSOs would like to give to the market participants. So one of these is which calculation allocation option would be preferable, and why? What time for implementation do market participants need in case there will be the switch to explicit flow-based allocation? And is there any openness for a shift of current Switzerland border auction timings to enable a sequential market allocation between Switzerland borders and CE flow-based market coupling? So I think we can go now step by step to the answer of questions or clarification.
And maybe there's now an opportunity maybe to discuss this. So for us, it is open, and we really need your input here, whether this is a feasible option or not.
Maybe one question to start with is more in the second option, the RAM sharing principle. Like I understand that the two domains will gonna be created somehow, and the RAM will need to be splitted. Is there any idea at that stage to split the RAM? Because I'm not sure how there can be ever a good methodology for that. What's the idea here?
Well, it's both for NTC or the flow-based explicit approach where you need to split RAM. It's about defining the principles to fairly split. And one of the principles is looking into the forecast direction. That can be a principle. Not taking it black and white, so that's a balance to strike. Because if you only look into the forecast direction and you don't have anything in the other direction, forecast is not 100% perfect. So that's an element to take into account. And other elements we will need to identify and discuss. So we are more at this early stage of having this debate. And clearly it's not an easy debate to have. So that it will take us time. And we also need to be able to test it, to understand also the effects. But yeah, both options, both concepts will need to go through that question and define such design principle.
Explain a bit more this forecast direction, because like concretely, if you have I don't know, a CNEC in Romania, what is how many RAM you're gonna give to Swiss on that CNEC based on the forecast direction? What is the methodology here?
That is indeed to be defined. So we don't have the answer right now. You're anticipating the CG in 2025.
But you have no really idea yet for doing that.
But at the end, maybe, yes, you touched the most probably one of the most difficult questions, because when you want to do it properly, then you need a concept for it and so on, and you have to test the concept if it's working well, etc. If it's stable, if it's not in one case of the year it fits, but in a lot of cases fits, and even if the forecast is wrong, which happens even with the best forecast, the question is how strong is the magnitude of being wrong, and what then? Does it still work well? And this is some target that we set for ourselves. But at the end, in each of capacity calculations where you're not coordinated, actually you're doing the same. You're pre-allocating RAM capacity somewhere, and you can be wrong and you can be right. And for us, it's just clear when you're not coordinating it, you have much more probability to be wrong. And therefore we're trying just to improve the past and bring it to a really better level without having detrimental effects. This is our target, and we know we still have some work, but it's not the case that we are trying to do something completely new, because the effects were always there.
Jérôme, I see that you are there as well, but I think Julius wants to add to this discussion, isn't it, Julius?
Yeah, just to keep it in simple words, forecast. What the forecast means is of course the market forecast. So we try to allocate the RAMs where they are expected to be appropriately used and needed by the market. That's a difficult task because we're in D-2, so the details need to be figured out. But maybe to keep it in simple words with one example for you, Olivier, if one idea could be, okay, if the forecast is that there's 0 exchanges expected with Switzerland, and that causes kind of 0 RAM needed on this, what did you have, a Romanian CNEC, then there will also be from this Romanian CNEC almost 0 capacity be allocated for this flow-based domain. It's an extreme example. Of course, there will always be, like minimum allocations for both sides of core of Central Europe and the Swiss borders. But that's the idea. You try to anticipate what the market needs. How exactly, technically, and so on and so forth. What's the most efficient way? As Steve said, that's a little bit too far ahead, but the key here is to work towards the most efficient system for allocating the capacities with the best forecast that we have in our TSO environment.
Jérôme, please.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's just to make sure I understand, because yeah, it's not really clear to me. So this explicit flow-based allocation, so for Swiss border, I'm wondering in terms of timing, how it would impact the whole process, in the morning, because this would only allocate cross-border capacity. Am I correct? Not energy. So it wouldn't change the energy bidding then? And also in terms of timing, do we need to amend the timing as the Swiss borders capacity allocation happens before the SDAC timing? So it's really more questions to understand the concept. I don't know if I was clear or not, but
Yeah, I think so. So it's about the sequential approach and what does it mean? Is that right?
Yeah.
Ferdinando, could you?
Yeah, I would say that for this there will be an assessment. Now we are in the very the very first beginning of the think about the process. So there will be an assessment and about this.
Jerome, please.
Yeah, maybe general comment from my side, and I'm far from being a super technical specialist, but from the explanation that we have today, it's extremely difficult to answer even the first question. So I definitely welcome the fact that you're doing research, and but we'll need more in-depth explanation. Probably the last point on this concept of explicit flow-based that makes me particularly tick is like the example of CEE flow-based. We remember that was a failed experience, so I hope this is acknowledged and that we build on lessons from that, not trying to reproduce things while having forgotten that this was abandoned after it was set up. So but yeah, definitely, like, we'd be happy to contribute. We're happy to see that you're working on this, but we need to understand it, or I need to understand it better. Because for now it's very blurry.
I think these are all relevant points that should be also feedback as part of the public consultation. Sorry, I have an echo, I think. I mean, we don't need to answer the questions exactly right now, but everything that is necessary for answering this fundamental difference, because it will imply a market design, a change in the market design. And if additional information is really necessary for that, I think that should also be a relevant feedback in the public consultation. There's a certain, I would say, idea that this way would make the whole system more efficient, especially if there could be a sequential allocation. It would just make more capacity, most probably, not guaranteed, most probably more capacity available throughout Europe, both in central as on the Swiss borders. But it will imply changes also on the market participant side, as it makes it more complex. And to what is needed to assess that from your side would be really valuable input and feedback also from the public consultation.
If I may, maybe like some projections about what would it mean in terms of optimization of capacity, this kind of thing, in concrete numbers. That is also something that helps us take positions. So we can take a position on something very theoretical that we understand halfway. If at least you have some ideas, even if it's super vague projections, that's always helpful.
So maybe to also to put the expectations in the right framework, especially with the Swiss integration concept. As you see, we are in a conceptual phase where we're all committed to go in to improve the processes of the past and to bring them to the next level in terms of efficiency, in terms of capacity provision and also in terms of security coordination, that it really is just a sound concept. Julius explained some parts of it. Steve was as well there to explain what the ideas behind are. But as you and quite right say, it's not at the level at the moment where you can exactly assess for each of the concepts which are the capacities expectations that we have. And to make it clear, we are currently exactly in that point where we say we have ideas, we know the direction, and there are some options that we are investigating, and we explicitly want your feedback on those, and also some concerns, what should be clarified, etc. And it's clear for us as well, when we are narrowing down the concepts with your feedback, then of course it is expected from us as well that we will have an amendment procedure, making it then explicit, and at that time we should have as well a more in-depth assessment of the concrete proposal then, and this will of course be presented to you as well. But for the time being, it would be just interesting for us as well to form our concepts better, to take your considerations on board in the further steps. But it's not now the last time where we present you something and then it will go live somewhere. So there will be several steps in between.
So you can see these three questions rather as, do you feel the potential in it? Do you feel it's worthwhile to further investigate on it? We understand it may be too soon to say, yeah, we could exactly do it that way. We need to better understand it. But this indication, that's what we're searching for, so that we know, okay, is it a valuable option for us to move towards the next step with, and then be able to come back with you with more insight.
Of course, there are two sides of it. So one is the actual expectation of the capacities, and the other side is the operational side. Does it fit in the operational world? So
do we gain 1 megawatt of capacity and then increase calculation time by an hour and a half? Is that
exactly? But that's the point.
So,
yeah,
this kind of,
yeah.
We can bring those things like
Yeah.
That's why we want
Exactly
to have your assessment out.
Yeah.
Not just capacities, but also operational aspects, both in terms of security, but also in terms of how does this whole thing works.
Yeah.
One also wants to contribute to the exchange here.
Yes,
Yes, go ahead, Zoran.
Yeah, sorry. On Jerome's previous question about combining explicit with implicit and the fact and the sequential approach on the table, at least how I see it. Of course, if there was an explicit an allocation on Swiss borders, we don't have a full picture. There's going to be an energy trade afterwards. So I think that idea is not to wait for the nominations. Then in such a case, it would not be possible to set all this in proper timing. But after explicit allocation, there would be much clearer picture on the expected exchanges on Swiss borders, which is way clearer than the net position forecast. And in such a case, the extraction of capacities and considering the leftovers to turn back to core or Central East Europe would be way better than from the net position forecast. That's how I see it. So it's not a perfect process. There is still some uncertainty, but would bring much more certainty than the net position forecast. But maybe if I'm wrong, maybe TSO's colleague can complement. Also, for future discussions, maybe it would be good that TSO colleagues try to provide some timing of this sequential approach. Then it would be clearer what can be done and what cannot be done.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon me for the naive question. If I understand it correctly, one of the options is doing flow-based without stack.
Sorry,
without coupling.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
explicit flow-based.
Wouldn't, and you could say there is a sequential process already right now where you have NTCs and then you have flow-based, but the NTCs are relatively stable, whereas flow-based is going to be way more variable. So wouldn't we end up in a situation such as Nord Pool on the 26th of June, where you have way too much capacity for the size of the market? Because in Nord Pool on the 26th, you have almost zero spreads because they have all the capacity, but a subset of the order books. And they are on a day when people expect a lot of capacity, they will have very little. On a day when people expect very little capacity, they will have a lot. Whereas with NTCs, at least you know that it's more or less always the same value, so you can adapt your bids accordingly.
I think you are referring to the partial decoupling event, and
yes, but not itself the partial decoupling. The fact that on a normal day you would have the two NEMOs, would say, I don't know, 80% and 20% of the other books, and you have 1,000 megawatt of capacity, and they compete with each other. On that day, you had a smaller exchange, which still had the 1,000 megawatt, and therefore you had almost zero spreads. And here it would be the same on a day where people expect 1,000 megawatt on the Swiss borders, but in reality, the flow base gives, I don't know, 3,000. They will use them all, and then the remaining part of the bids, they will not have that capacity because it's gone at 10:30.
So the question is, so if there are no bids, then maybe nobody takes the capacities, and then you end up with very little capacities there. Is this the summary? Just to
end up with the entire capacity or a subset which is not predictable by the market allocated to a small part of the market, which is the Swiss borders. Whereas if it had been completely coupled, it's the entire capacity offered the entire market.
obviously.
And today you don't have this problem because people know that more or less you are going to have, I don't know, 3,200 megawatts from France to Switzerland every day. It was a bit of a surprise today, but you're not going 5,000 or 500 the following day. What I'm saying is a sequential process works, in my opinion, so long as it's relatively stable. But if you have the implicit volatility of flow-based domains, you will end up with sort of a yo-yo effect where people were.
That can be an input indeed for the consultation, that what's the level of volatility that comes out of the different concepts.
Actually, it's online.
Oh, sorry, Julius.
Yeah, so what Steve said is one point. On the other hand side, I would say the expectation that capacities will be more volatile will happen in both approaches. Yeah. Simply due to the fact that we are trying to make the system more efficient and allocate capacities more there where they're expected to be, which we simply, as of today, on the Swiss borders do not have, because the processes are absolutely independent and uncoordinated. So a certain more volatility is something that I think we can expect anyways, as with the change from NTC based back in CWE to flow based, simply due to the design to make it more efficient and allocate capacities where they are needed. But anyways, I think the question about volatility can be also put up in public consultation as a general question, and like a demand by the market participants, as I expect. Yeah, as I understand.
Mm-hmm. I think that we had a good first exchange on this topic, and for us a clear signal that we will get good feedback on this. That will help us also to shape our further work. Is it okay that we move to the next topic on?
Can we just add one last remark?
Sure.
On one more input on the discussion here? I mean, I know I understand from a theoretical perspective the idea of going flow-based, especially the position of Switzerland, where we can probably achieve something that's more physical or more realistic compared to NTC today. Maybe where I'm getting a bit worried is, so this is mostly a day-ahead discussion right now, and we already see that the capacity calculation is probably not quite the same between day-ahead and intraday. So for the core side of the story, are we expecting eventually to also see explicit flow-based allocation further down the market timeframes, or is that just going to stop at day-ahead level? And then we would have, again, more difficulty to see the evolution of the capacity we get, because we'll have this explicit flow base for the day ahead. And then when we jump to intraday on the core, we remove completely this idea. Maybe that's something also to consider. Then if we have the timing, I think the question of timing was framed before for continuing to do explicitly.
Yeah. So a very good point, actually, because we also identified the need ourselves to step beyond the pure legal framework that is now on our plate. And the pure legal framework, I mean the CCR determination that Harold introduced. We are now obliged to develop methodology for day ahead. But very quickly we came to the understanding that, okay, it's also the starting point to calculate capacities, the leftovers for the intraday market. And we will also look into a concept for that, including what it means for the Swiss border. So when we talked about going for the amendment afterwards and doing our investigations, this startup of the intraday market part, our first calculation, is also on our radar, and we also want to have a look at that. Yeah.
Okay, Fernando, can you pick it up from here?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so going to the next topic, the HVDC consideration. To introduce the topic, just a reminder to the situation in core CCR and Italy Nord CCR. Indeed, in the current core day-ahead capacity calculation process, the evolved flow-based methodology is the reference for the treatment of HVDC interconnectors. In particular, there is only one HVDC cable, the Allegro HVDC. In the Italy Nord CCR, there is the Pisa cable between France and Italy. And in the Italy Nord, the capacity calculation process, the HVDC set point range is considered as a non-costly remedial action. And for the operational set point, it is calculated by taking the ratio between the exchanges and NTC on Italian borders. So, considering this, the CETSOs worked in order to integrate the peculiarities of PISA cable in the flow-based domain and in the C methodology. Considering that the HVDC PISA was designed differently from the Allegro cable, indeed, it is currently used as a remedial action to relieve congestion on cross-border elements. And indeed, also in real time, this cable is used as a PST to solve congestion. Another difference between the HVDC PISA and the HVDC Allegro is that on France-Italy border, there are also other interconnection lines, and whose RAM could be increased thanks to the combination of the remedial action HVDC with other remedial action in that zone, in particular topological remedial action. With this considerations, the proposed solution by Terna and RT for the CDI capacity calculation is to consider the HVDC set point as a new costly remedial action, of course, to be added to the one already reported in the core CCM. In the allocation phase, the evolve flow based will be the reference for the treatment of HVDC interconnectors, as stated also in the core CCM. And then regarding the operational set point, RT and Terna are in favor of giving the possibility to use the PDF threshold. For this, in the next slide, there is the reasoning behind the PDF threshold, based indeed on the experience from Elia and Amprion on HVDC Allegro. Also for PISA cable, there could be an issue that the set point will be optimized in order to release constraints on CNEC with low sensitivity to maximize social welfare. So, and the risk will be to have a high frequency of circular flow on France-Italy borders. So by keeping this possibility stated in the core, also in the core CCM, the goal would be to avoid those situations where HVDC set point can change every hour for the CNECs with low sensitivity. And so RT antenna would like to keep the possibility of implementing the PTDF threshold with the acknowledge of the core TSO reasoning provided in the explanatory note of the third amendment of the CCM, where the TDF threshold is intended to be applied only if an adequate alternative solution will be not implemented or found. Then we have the benefits of the proposed treatment. So the first one is to optimize and enlarge the flow-based domain around the MPF, in particular with the coordination with other remedial actions. So the benefit is not only to have this new remedial action HVDC PISA, but also the coordination with the other topological remedial action in this zone of France-Italy border. Indeed, without HVDC remedial action, those other remedial actions could be not triggered or uncoordinated. So we see this possibility to enlarge the flow-based domain. The NRAW objective function will be not changed compared to the core DAED process. Here, the third point, sorry, it's a typo. This should be removed. And as stated in the CACCM, each TSO shall individually define to include this range as a remedial action in the capacity calculation. And in particular for PISA, as I said in the introduction, the HVDC reflects the real-time operation where it is used as a remedial action. And the other benefit is that the evolve flow based is will be the reference for treatment in the allocation phase without modification compared to the core third amendment. So this is the treatment of HVDC for CCM, DAET, where the peculiarities of both CCR were taken into account, and with particular reference to the HVDC functioning and treatment.
Thank you, Fernando. Any questions on this so far? Yeah.
Another nice question. How does optimizing the HVDC in the allocation phase work with NTCs?
Did you catch that, Fernando?
Sorry, I think it's quite. It's not very near to microphone, so I don't.
Oh no, we will.
Sorry again, probably naive question. How does setting the working point of the HVDC work in the allocation phase if you have entities. Because Allegro right now it's sort of an extra bidding zone in core.
And the same principle will also be applied to the PISA interconnector.
Okay.
So it's going to be fully embedded in the flow-based logic. So
But then you don't apply a flow-based logic in allocation.
The principle is indeed that the capacity of the interconnector is a degree of freedom, a variable that the allocation will optimize, that can use to optimize the exchanges. Yes.
But maybe there is something that I misunderstood. I thought that after CCR, the allocation of, say, France, Italy would remain NTC. Am I?
No. This is maybe this is a very, but maybe you are not the only one. So thank you for raising the point.
Because I think, Jerome, I think that was our understanding.
No, indeed, it is planned with the merger. So this is the basic concept. Let's say that factually the whole region, Central Europe, is then operated flow-based as it is the case with core today. And the only thing where we are now having the special concept that we discussed previously is the Swiss borders. So, but all the other borders connecting core and Italy North together will be operated in a flow-based market coupling process. So this is the basic concept of it, of the change of the capacity calculation methodology.
This misunderstanding. Were we the only ones with this misunderstanding that flow-based would be used for the capacity calculation, but not for the allocation on the Italian borders?
I wasn't understanding a complete flow base on my side. I was understanding a complete flow base on my side, not NTC anymore, except for Swiss eventually.
But just to make it clear, this is the thanks for the question, but this is the and therefore the concepts for the HVDC connection as well.
Yeah, then it becomes clear how it's used.
But I'm not sure I understand. Like, will there be virtual hub for PISA, or it will only be optimized in the remedial action optimization? I'm not sure I understand here on the slide.
Yes, there will be virtual hubs because the principle of where we call it evolve flow based, and now I come technical, but that's a principle with the virtual hubs that indeed applies to any HVDC interconnector, whether it's today in a core system, whether we join at that moment Celtic interconnector in core, and then we move to Central Europe with HVDC PISA. These are all applying these concepts.
So
yes.
There is no difference of treatments except for the remedial action optimization.
Yes,
so
correct. Correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think that's what Claudio.
Claudio, please, you raise your hand. Would you add to the discussion? Would you like that?
Yes, just to add, because the initial part of the question was about, if I understood correctly, how we manage today. Today we did it with the NTC approach. The HVDC is fully embedded on the French border, so it is used as a remedial action in order to maximize the NTC. But then there's no dedicated allocation for HVDC PISA. The capacity for the Italian-French border is given to the market. And tomorrow it will be, as just explained by Harald and Ferdinando. I don't know if I was able to catch your question, at least the first part.
I think the question is answered now, Claudio.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
My side general reflection, I assume that the Allegro cable sometimes is used for remedial action purposes. So this, like all this may be right and may be justified. It also looks like, okay, we're trying to tailor the model to a specific use that is currently done or that is currently projected of PISA, which can be fair, but it's how would that work? Like if we try actually to fit PISA and make its use like tailored to how capacity is calculated in that region. So here it's not. It looks like we're tailoring an exception for PISA. We'll be tailoring an exception for the next cable. Is that really fundamentally justified, or can't we do things in a way that fits actually the capacity calculation methodology? So it's for instance, again, it's very difficult to take a position based on this kind of.
There will be more background, of course, in the consultation.
But
yeah.
what would it change to like? Couldn't like if we had a very simple integration of that cable in the capacity calculation process and allocation process, like what I understand of Allegro, can't we use PISA in a way that also satisfies the needs of Darna and RTE? Do we need to have an exception for this one and for the next HVDC cable?
On my side, I misunderstood. I understood from both slides that there will be a special treatment for PISA, like Jerome is saying. But then I understand that actually that's not the case, right? If it's gonna be virtual hub like Allegro, it's all exactly the same, right? So there is no special treatment. Yeah. I think there is. Maybe the slides are not well because it really sounds like there is a special treatment, but actually there is not. So it's.
But what is being added is that the non-costly remedial action optimizer, which is running in the beginning of the process, it is made possible to also put an HVDC cable in that optimizer. But that does not preclude how the allocation will then optimize the set point of the cable. This is more to, I think, reflect the operational experience that is there today on the operation of the cable PISA and make the link with how it's then followed up after the market coupling. So that is where the connection is being made. Like we have a certain use and experience in operating that cable, and we'd like to reflect that inside the non-cost remedial action optimizer. That is where the change comes from.
So we can expect something that will be a change in terms of the NRO process, but we won't see anything specific about PISA in the capacity calculation methodology. That's what we can expect?
We will not write PISA requires a special treatment. We will write the NRO is now also open to accept an HVDC.
You could even put Allegro if you wish to, right?
If you wish to, if there is an operational rationale behind it, absolutely. So thanks for clarifying and coming back to it, because I understand you were maybe giving the wrong perception, but there's no special treatment in terms of rules for one specific cable.
John, please go ahead.
Yes, just to come back on the previous points on the whole flow-based application. So maybe we misunderstood, but now from what I understand, so the flow-based allocation will be applied to the Italian borders, but not the Swiss border. Is this correct? But it will be applied on the Italian border, because initially we would have thought NTC would remain, knowing that Swiss is not in a market coupling.
So for the Swiss borders, it is open, but all the other central CCR borders are flow-based, also for the allocation. So France, Italy would be in the flow-based.
And there will be no intermediate step in which you use the flow-based you merge the regions for the capacity calculation, but you keep NTCs for France, Italy.
No.
No. So you will go from 2 separate regions in capacity calculation and NTC in allocation to 1 merged region for capacity calculation and flow-based for the allocation.
Yes.
At the same time.
Yes.
Sometime at the end of 25.
Only the borders with Switzerland.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about.
Yeah. But with all the other borders, that's the case. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the timeline is late 25.
For implementation or?
Yes.
No, the timeline is 2027.
2027.
Yes.
And of course,
so no change until 2027.
No change until, and maybe there are changes, but not within, not due to the Central European region. There will be changes maybe in Italy North for the borders, like export corner, which was shortly before done now. What we just get a hint, and maybe it helps. What we of course foresee as well as for every other major change that we did in the past, we will have a certain time with a parallel run, external parallel run, where you will still have the existing allocation and calculation principles in place, and in parallel you will get the information of the parallel run, and so you have the comparison. You will see what changes, and you can adapt already your systems, your behavior, etc., to the future, and get into the new world more or less. And of course, in that phase, we will have as well opportunities to discuss with you any major developments that you may perceive in that time. So, and when it will be started, etc., time schedule, of course, we will come back to you with that.
This for my short memory, but didn't RT say in one of their messages this summer, didn't they say the situation in 2025 is going to be different because of the merge of the regions? No,
but not.
I think.
No, I don't know what I do not recall the exact message. but lastly, 2025, due to that capacity calculation methodology, nothing will change in operation.
Baptiste Valentin from NG. Will it be the same timing for the Celtic interconnector, though?
We will have a slide
but
later, and it's indeed 2027.
Okay, cool.
Maybe one last question on the timing is the inclusion of Swiss into the SDAC. Is it still something that is on the table at the European Commission level? And how does it affect? Would it affect the? Like my understanding is that all of that discussion about how to share the capacity with Swiss and so on is completely obsolete if they join, right? Where are we on that?
First message, but Julius is here, so that's a good thing. But indeed, this is the case, of course, in terms of technicalities, procedural behavior, etc. When you have fully coordinated processes, meaning from calculation up to allocation, then it is just fluently. You don't need any special solutions. The good thing is what we are working now on is having already the full basis, but then doing something for an extraction or whatever. And if this decision comes, we just can't leave the last module away, and we are prepared as well for that. But Julius, on the probability and on the timing, maybe you can give at least your current picture.
On the probability, I will not express the percentage we hope, because of course we hope that the negotiations are going in a positive direction. But maybe on the timeline, both governments have the mandate to negotiate until roughly end of the year. It's not only about the electricity agreement. There's a broader package behind. It's still ongoing. In the very best case, if the negotiations are successful, there will be voting procedures both in the EU and in Switzerland during the next year, and then in the second half of next year, I would say there's clarity. That goes in parallel to then the approval procedure of this methodology that we are here working out, with a situation where Switzerland is still explicitly treated. But as Harald said, of course, if in the best case, all of that goes successful with the agreement between the EU and Switzerland, and it would simplify the whole process, obviously. Of course, we would need to change things again. but then we would be in a truly efficient solution where Switzerland would be participating in the flow-based market coupling. Timeline, as said, there would be kind of white smoke somewhere latest, I think, during the second half of next year. But that's an absolutely parallel stream where the TSOs are not engaged in.
Yeah, thanks, Julius. This more or less closes the. Oh, sorry, Jérôme.
If we're done with this, maybe just a note, because there are different topics that were focused on two of them. I noticed there is topic 5 on allocation constraints. This has been a point of focus of our organization on Italy North capacity calculation methodologies already, but also now on the integration in essential things. So just wanting to make sure that things around like managing voltage control and dynamic stability, that may be a necessity. Let's make sure that Karina really explains very well in the methodology proposal what is strictly related to Italy North and what is not just Italy in general. So that also we don't shift voltage control and dynamic stability concerns from the whole peninsula to the north, and then kind of also that this has an effect on the rest of the central region. So yeah, we would really welcome a clear analysis of what is strictly related to Italy North and what is related to the rest of the peninsula.
Yeah. I'll note it.
Thank you.
Okay. Jean-Michel?
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick remark that saying that happy to see that you said there will be a parallel run for this Central Europe merging. So yeah, just to make that remark that a parallel run is clearly needed. So happy to see that.
Thanks, Jérôme.
Thank you.
Okay, that is the closure then of Central CCR, and we've planned a break now for about slightly less than half an hour now until 11, also to allow some discussions here at the coffee machine, and then we will resume at 11 o'clock with core CCR. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
So, jetzt welche Folie 26?
Welcome back, everybody. We have still some people coming in from coffee talks in the break. And we are about to begin with the core CCR part. But we let's get started on that part, Steve.
Yes.
You pick that up.
Absolutely. Also put on my camera. That's nicer. So we promised to give you a short update on where we stand with the overall core program. This is a picture we have been using as well in the past to project the different projects that we are implementing, different timeframes. So in terms of scope, this picture hasn't changed. There are a few evolutions that we'd like to point out. The first one is that on the long-term capacity calculation side. So we also take the topic more in depth later in the afternoon, but there we have identified a way forward to implement a coordinated capacity calculation by November 2025. So that's an important change that we're having here. With respect to day ahead, and Reinhard will come also that later. You know, the process is live since a good 2 years, and we are now implementing some add-ons with advanced hybrid coupling, with coordinated validation, and we discussed, of course, the merger of central CCR. So in terms of scope, that scope is what we have been discussing with you the last year. There is no change to that. Intraday, that was a big year this year for intraday, with the go lives of IDCC-A and IDCC-B. Major achievements have been made there. And the team, meanwhile, started fully working on the next step, implementation of the IDCC-C capacity calculation. So that is a recalculation that is taking place early in the morning to feed a bit of capacities from market time at 6 o'clock in the morning onwards. And that is supposed to come then by mid next year. On WASC and cost sharing, there, I think last time we already explained that we would have some delay compared to the official timing methodology. That's not a secret. The main focus for us here is it's a stepwise approach to implement it. And there has been a new element on the table on these methodologies. The European Court ruling that took place on 25th of September kind of annulled the cost-sharing methodology. So as you know, there were several appeals that were made, both on WASC and cost-sharing methodology. The outcome of the appeals is the WASC methodology is confirmed, but for the cost-sharing methodology, the file is now back in the hands of the Board of Appeal of Acer. And there we then indeed wait more information about what are going to be the next steps. So today this is not yet clear, as far as I know. I don't know, Zoran, if you want to, from your side, already say an additional word on that, if the status is correctly reflected.
Yeah, I think you correctly stated it. The ROSC methodology is upheld. The cost-sharing methodology is annulled. Some pleas were actually not accepted. One important plea on the scope of methodology is upheld, but the flow decomposition plea, for example, is accepted from procedural reasons. That means insufficient explanations are provided for the selection of the flow decomposition methodology, and the most important annulment is the loop flow threshold. So the common loop flow threshold set by Acer is not accepted. And yeah, this is the situation currently. We, and I guess also TSOs and NRAs, are assessing the situation now. I don't have further details on how to proceed with this.
Thanks, Aran, for these compliments. It's indeed very fresh information, and we will continue to exchange on that also with you and NRAs in the coming weeks and months. BTCC, well, methodology is there on the table. It has been approved, and it's on the planning as a last block after implementation of WASC. So for the moment, it will not create real content discussions on the short term in this setting here. And also with respect to the harmonized market-based methodology, and it has not been triggered yet in terms of using it by core parties in a core context. So also no change to the status there compared to last time. We can move forward. So this is a nice visual that summarizes the milestones that we have achieved in the last year and the milestones that are still ahead of us. I will not go through them one by one, but what's important to know is we expanded, of course, the core region with the inclusion of the Irish colleagues due to the Celtic interconnector. And what we are expecting on the short term to happen is that we are able to move forward for the implementation of the Swiss consideration in core. So I think we are close to having the validation on NRA side, and then implementation can follow. And despite the, let's say, the legal uncertainty regarding the cost-sharing methodology, we still continue to build the system, and we expect to have a first step, some early testing step. We call it an end-to-end light product, available by end of this year, so that we can start some first technical testing. So that's important to know. Despite legal context, we continue the implementation on that.
Question, maybe? On this Swiss consideration, I see we won't talk too much about that in the coming slides. Can you give us a bit of a flavor of what does that mean for the core capacity calculation, this Swiss consideration?
In which sense?
Well, what are we expecting? What are the expected changes with this Swiss consideration?
What I remember in the past, we once explained the concept high level. It's indeed not part of the slides here, but what we can do is we can go more in depth on it after the validation has taken place. Okay. So I want to avoid that I have to now on the fly explain it without material. I think it will be difficult to follow, but we can organize a more educational session after the validation. I think we agreed on that as well in the past to do it. So that's fine for you to do it that way. So the milestone in 25, the next step of IDCC go live. We also have a big capacity improvement study regarding IDCC. Bernard will come back on it later today as well. So a lot of things still to happen around that time frame. But I think the message is clear that we are busy on many fronts. And what we are also doing in parallel is mapping it out more in detail on our roadmap to make sure that all dependencies and priorities are well covered. And this is also important as basis for making a plan for the next steps of Central Europe as well. So once we have that finalized, we will also then use that in our communication and update you. No questions so far. Oh, in the chat, is there some question in the chat? No. Okay. Celtic.
Yeah. Let's go to the
Celtic interconnector. We talked about it already this morning. So we will integrate the Celtic interconnector in the core region. And this is planned to happen around beginning of 2027. Of course, it's a high-level planning, and it's not going to be kind of a big bang where on day one all the processes are switching. So that's kind of a next step to make that more fine-tuned in the planning. But it will be an important change because it will couple the SEM markets with our with our SDAC market in that sense. We will, of course, we'll have a full integration. I think that's the important message I want to share here. So it's about day ahead, it's about intraday, it's about balancing platforms. So it will be a full integration that is going to happen with the Celtic interconnector with respect to the SEM market zone. And of course, when this becomes more concrete in terms of implementation, we will share results and keep you informed.
Just for the avoidance of doubt, this will be advanced hybrid coupling.
Very good question. We call it, officially it's called evolved flow-based, but technically that's the same as advanced hybrid coupling. Why do we give it a different name? Advanced hybrid coupling, we use it for integrating borders that are outside of our capacity calculation region. And evolved flow-based, we use it to name the borders with HVDC inside the capacity calculation region. And because Celtic interconnector with Ireland is now inside the core region formally, we call it evolved flow-based.
That means that there will be some Irish critical branch in as part of the flow-based, the core flow-based, or a bit like the situation with Denmark 1 with the Nordics, where they are not synchronous, but they still describe the in this case the Irish network.
Likely. I don't have more. We don't have more details at this stage, but yeah, likely it's going that way. But it's then going to come when we set up the implementation. Then it will become more clear if the connects are added and they are, what the effect will be. So that's all the implementation trajectory and the testing trajectory to happen.
Just a remark on this and the staged approach and what will be developed anyway or detailed later. We've seen on a number of radial interconnectors, especially long, like cables like this, how very often there's a strong focus on day ahead, of course, but then like intraday or long-term capacity calculation comes years later. Which we would hope this is not the case, and that there's, even if it's not a big bang approach, there's a clear plan for a quick access to intraday and long-term capacity also on that border. So just that it's noted in the in how you consider the implementation plan on this. Because we've seen on the like of the NSL cable, for instance, where it took years to get access to capacity in other timeframes than they had. Things
and no more information I have at this moment, but that will then come from first instance RT and Airgrid who need to integrate it in their processes. So we'll follow that up in the future. Understand your point, of course. I think, yeah, it's good background info. Thanks.
Points on interconnection. Then I propose to go more in depth in day ahead core. And we have a few topics on the table: the third amendment, advanced hyper coupling, spike update, and questions. Reinhard, are you in the call?
I'm here. Good morning.
Good to hear you.
Good. Is the sound okay?
Yeah, it's perfect, Reinhard. Please go ahead.
Great. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Apologies up front. I was supposed to be in the room with you, but I fell sick yesterday, so I decided to not pose a risk on anybody of you, but also further myself. So I hope that it will still work in this format as well. As Reid mentioned, a few topics from day ahead, starting now with the third amendment, which was approved by the NRAs in the early summer this year. The main content of it was the coordinated validation methodology, for which we then also have the first high-level roadmap for you on the next slide. Then to amend the harmonization of the FRM approach, postpone Connect selection study and the detailed FRM study, as well as the harmonized GLSK. A review of the allocation constraint methodology, in particular for PSE, who keeps using allocation constraints. Then a methodology on the circular flows around HVDC interconnectors. And then a few fixes of glitches that happened in the second amendment, which was related to advanced high recoupling predominantly, that were rectified. You find here the links for the documents. The formal decisions were taken by each and every core NRA. So you will also find them on each NRA's website, as well as centrally on the ENTSO-E website. And we thought to make this a specific point, since it was not an ACER decision, where there's always, of course, the ACER website as the source for the third or for any decision. It's a bit more scattered when the NRAs take the decision. So just so you all know, this decision has taken place, and we have started implementing the changes, in particular the coordinated validation. Which, if we jump to the next slide, where we have the first high-level planning for its implementation. So we do foresee a stepwise implementation, essentially aligned with increased application or optimization of remedial actions, and then also the coordination of different kinds of remedial actions. Implementation work has started on TSO side, but the tooling itself is quite big and expected to be heavy. So for this, we are just now starting a public EU-wide tender to identify a vendor who can support us in implementing the tooling that's needed for this process. And this we expect, so the tender process we expect to be concluded by end of Q1 next year. And on the implementation side, so we work currently on the further conceptual design. Of course, this will be finalized, and once a vendor has been selected on a dialogue with the vendor. And then stage the implementation with the building blocks, as we call them, also of the coordinated validation, starting with circumstance selection, so the extreme market situations that we are going to analyze out of the flow-based domain. Then a RAO, remedial action optimization, that initially will run without the application of CVAs. and then move on to a full RAO without topological measures, most likely at the beginning. That would then, towards the end of 26, for the first time, be able to run a full coordinated validation with the potential outcome of CVAs. And then enrich the tooling further with the optimization of topological measures. And as we go along, always keep harmonization with ROSC, but once ROSC is live, to do the full harmonization. And it should be noted that the level of coordination of remedial actions in the coordinated validation can always needs to reflect the status that we have in later operational planning processes, so that those processes in terms of coordination of remedial actions in the different timeframes are fully aligned. That was it on coordinated validation. Are there any reflections maybe in the room?
Not immediately. So
thanks, Steve.
Can continue.
Thanks. Then next topic is an update on advanced hybrid coupling. So the second amendment brought the details on how AHC would be implemented in core about. And ever since that decision, we've been working on its implementation. It was ultimately then also decided to implement advanced hybrid coupling on 9 so-called core external borders that you see here in this small table on the right. So on all these biddings on borders, we'll introduce also then from core side advanced hybrid coupling and virtual hubs. With some, there will be then a link also with Nordic flow-based, in particular with the DK 1 and 2 borders. So there will be then also an interaction there. In terms of timing, so the second amendment requires that the TSOs are ready by end of March next year, so that the capacity calculation processes are set up and ready, and then that the implementation of the advanced hybrid coupling in operations with SDAC happens by mid next year. For this readiness, though, we are a bit dependent on SDAC and the implementation work, in particular on the 15-minute MTU, which is expected earlier in next year before core AHC. The implementation of 15-minute MTU needs to be safeguarded as a higher priority. We also agreed in the past we would do a 1-month external parallel run, then shortly before the actual go live, both to publish then data on a daily basis, but also so that US market participants can start adjusting to the changed flow-based domains with advanced hybrid coupling. And we also are running a couple of what we call spike-like runs to assess the impact of advanced hybrid coupling, out of which we have successfully completed the first spike-like run 3-4 weeks ago. We are at this very moment running spike-like run number 2, and the results of this one will also then be shared in a report as agreed in the past. Quickly going back to spike-like run number 1, it went through the capacity calculation chain without any issues. What we did not include, though, at this stage was individual validation tooling, which in turn now is adapted with using partially the results of spike-like run number 1. NRAO not yet, but is in the meantime being made ready for AHC. And market coupling simulation has also not been performed, as there's still final alignment on topology matters to be done before this can be performed. A bit more on this then on the next slides as well, and I saw a hand up.
There's a question from Jérôme Michel.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I know this is something I mentioned already in the past, but yeah, regarding the parallel run. So I know there is only a 1 month parallel run, but in case the SDAG 15 minutes would be delayed, could it be an opportunity to have a longer parallel run for us? Because this is something I know this is something I mentioned already in the past, to have a longer parallel run, and yeah, at the moment it's only foreseen to be like a month, something like that. So if the SDAG 15 minutes is delayed, will it be an opportunity to have a longer parallel run for market participant?
Well, I don't see that direct link between 15-minute MTU and the duration of the parallel run. The reason for not doing an exhaustive parallel run like we had it when we first introduced core day-ahead flow-based is essentially on the operator's burden. Because and this was a discussion we had also with market participants in the margins of the second amendment, is we want to of course offer the best information you have, and this means that validations etc. would have to be part of the external parallel run, but it would also be a tremendous effort and burden on the operators to basically work two processes in parallel for an extended period. So in the end, it was a bit of a trade-off between quality and the reliability of the results, and a shorter period versus a longer period, but then potentially without validations, etc. And it was then agreed to do a shorter period where really the whole process chain would be run, including validation, so that you also get a feel for what it means in terms of validation.
Yeah, but from what I understand, yeah, earlier on that also this process would be implemented in like mid around June 2025. So depending on the SDAG 15 minutes. So it was, I think, understand from also a question of timing constraints. So that's why if we have more time, we can maybe rethink this.
Again, the time of go live or expected go live of AHC was not the reason to make it shorter. It was to allow for the processes to run well during the month, and that would not change per se if 15-minute MTUs were delayed.
That's a pity. Would have been would have been definitely better for market participant, but
that's acknowledged. But that's also why we then brought in the spike-like runs to give you reports on business days, where we also ask for your input on which business days to select, to give you a wide array of scenarios in the end that can help you prepare both your tooling but also your strategies, etc., for when advanced hybrid coupling enters.
Exactly, like it.
Sorry, is
even better.
Sorry,
is that related?
Intervention or a question?
Fantastic, like it.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm happy participant.
That's good. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
It was not me.
Some reactions here in the meeting room. Maybe this is related to 15-minute MTU or.
On my side, I have just a question on the decision of the included borders. This year, we've seen how important with the RT10 situation are the external borders of core. And RT was especially mentioning the France-Italian border, the France-Spain border. What is preventing at the moment to have the Iberian and Italian borders as part of the advanced hybrid coupling? Why that decision has been made to left them out somehow?
So for the Italian borders, it's clearly what I think was discussed an hour ago, the merger with Central Europe. So to go from the NTC approach today to a full flow based in a new region, and to not spend parallel implementation efforts, etc. It was also deemed a more economic solution in that sense to go straight for including the borders all the way. And for the French-Spanish border, RT did analyze the impact of the Spain border on its core eastern borders with Belgium and Germany, and concluded that there would not be a significant influence in terms of flows on respective connects. And then it was agreed that this border would not be included in AHC.
Yeah, exactly. That's the opposite of what they said this summer.
That was the major.
I think that wasn't that changed that position, or because it's
in Central Europe, the Spanish-French border will be included in AHC. So in the implementation of Central Europe CCR, they have capacity calculation that's included, but not in core.
And is it really a valid argument to say that it is a very much additional effort to add those France-Italian borders and and the Spanish borders? Because the merger of Italy is something we're gonna have in a very long time, while advanced hybrid coupling is a solution that kind of interimly address the problem of interaction between Italy and core. Can you elaborate a bit more on the additional effort that is needed to add those borders? It seems to me that the process would work the marginal cost of adding one border is not the same as just setting up the whole advanced hybrid coupling process. But I might be wrong here.
I would partially agree with your statement for the capacity calculation stage. So to add another few virtual hubs in the capacity calculation is probably a bit less of an issue. What we always have to keep in mind is the performance and complexity on the Euphemia side. Every virtual hub that is added does add to the strain on the performance, and to keep the numbers of hubs to a number that is feasible was an utmost request. There was also this, you might remember this discussion on whether to, instead of just per bidding zone border, model individual HVDCs. So even if they were in parallel, for example, to model them individually. This was also not moved forward, among other reasons, because of the performance, because it would mean two virtual hubs potentially instead of one. It is a trade-off in the end, again, towards performance mostly, to not do this.
Okay.
Maybe just a clarification question. When you mentioned earlier, you mentioned the 15-minute MT, not the question of the parallel run, but you said we want to take account of this. I didn't quite understand whether it was this will be integrated in the next spike, or it's just a question of when we do spikes in relation to the TSOs or NEMOs testing on the 15 minutes. So I didn't quite. So in other terms, will spike 3 and 4 take account of the fact that there will be a different product designation?
So you mean whether spike run 3 and 4 will somehow account for 15-minute MTUs? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So on capacity calculation side, no. Capacity calculation will stay at a 60-minute interval even after the introduction of 50-minute MTUs in day ahead. And Spike Leg Run 3 and 4 are also scheduled late this year, early next year. And for this, even if we were to produce then market coupling simulations with 50-minute MTUs, there would not be order books in 50-minute MTUs, so we couldn't. I hope this answers your questions.
Yeah.
Maybe a technical question, which in part
Would you talk in speak in the microphone?
Sorry,
Yeah.
technical question. So DK2 and O2 and so on, they are all DC cables. So they land in a specific point, and that specific point will coincide with the virtual bidding zone. But what about Romania, Bulgaria, which is AC? And I checked the 400 kb lines.
Yeah, so for AC borders, it's a bit more like with an NTC in the end, right? You have one, let's call it exchange channel, that is then the virtual hub from a core perspective. But also keep in mind that there will still be the NTC from, in this case, the SCE region that's computed between Transelectrica, ESO, and IPTO. And those values will also still be in SDOC. So in the end, there will be two sets of constraints for any of these borders. The NTCs from their native CCR, and then the capacities or the flow-based domain parameters that come from core that are related to those respective virtual hubs.
But is it worth the effort for something that is sort of, it has only one border with the SDAC, and whereby you will bundle stuff that is probably 200 or 300 kilometers apart?
Was that again on Romania, Bulgaria?
Yes.
Yeah. Here, Transelectrica did show that there is quite some influence on the exchanges on the Romanian-Bulgarian border and their core border with Hungary. And this was then a pure physical, technical wish from them initially to make this border also AHC, and this was followed then. Yeah.
Thank you.
John, please.
Maybe quick follow-up on this one. It is much higher level, but there are currently governmental export restrictions at the Romanian borders implemented by the Romanian government, which are under scrutiny by the European Commission. So it will be interesting to understand also on what basis this is implemented, whether it's actual possible exports and feasible exports by Romania, or taking into consideration the governmental restrictions. We hope it's the former, not the latter.
Okay. Now, the core capacity calculation also with AHC will always use a network model as a basis without any politics, I would say. So if there's a political dimension, okay, but it's not a concern that we have here, I would say, or that we should address here. It's probably placed elsewhere.
Yeah, maybe also one more question on my side. Just to clarify, is this list of border we see here the final definitive one? We had the question just earlier about trade-off of including borders versus performances. I think there's still a bit of unclarity on whether FEMIA can accommodate all of these new changes. At least this is how I perceive it. We already decided, or it's been decided, that perhaps France, Spain is not the best trade-off. Is there a chance that if we realize at some point that we have technical issues, that we might change, reduce, modify that list of border based on welfare gains versus computation, or is that really set in stone?
So for us, from core perspective, these are set in stone. Formally through the second amendment, which of the DAAD-CCM, which explicitly lists all those borders, and also implementation-wise, both on core side, but then at least to what we are aware of, also on NEMO, ESTAC, MCSC side, the implementation for core HC is set to happen with these borders. Now, if what the scenario you described ever materialized, then this is an issue then that ESTAC would have to flag and then come with a proposal on how to potentially cut down on borders or whatever, and then this would have to take place in a wider dialogue. But from core perspective, this is the set of borders. Yeah.
And just to be clear, and Marianne, you can confirm that, but today we don't have a signal that there is a performance issue, right? We are on our implementation track, and with the parallel one, we will get more depth about it, but some early testing already has been performed around it. And as far as I know, there is no red flag that has been raised on this.
So for the testing, do you use bids that are related to historical data sets, or are you also changing because I'm also feeling that with 15 minutes, the amount of orders that will be placed into the market will also probably increase. And I'm not sure if maybe this is just my ignorance, but if it's fully taken into account and whether we will not run into at live deployment issues then. But maybe this is a separate discussion more at stack level.
Yeah, I would say so. The order books is something that we as TSOs don't get our hands on. So it's not sure how this is done. But yeah, I would imagine historic order books. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All the requirements are indeed consolidated on the table of ESDAC, MCSC, and they have their processes to do the outlook of performance. I know they have been looking into that already. And in addition, we have this 1 parallel 1 that is an additional test period. And indeed, if there is any signal that is coming out, or discussion that needs to be held, it will be held in the MCSC forum. But we make sure that what we need to implement with this list of borders, that is clearly on the table, so that it's taken account for. On this aspect, I believe there are a few questions as well. And maybe we should check in the AOB quickly that we've covered them all.
I think these first 3 questions related to day ahead, they're not directly related to advanced hybrid coupling, but those will be answered afterwards, after the CG. And then we did indeed identify a couple of questions to be answered now. I think the last 2 perhaps make sense to answer right now, and then the other 2 to take when we also go through the presentation from Zeddy.
Yes. So the first 3 have been answered by Reinhard already. And then you have the question on 15-minute MTU and advanced hybrid coupling realistically be rolled out together. So that we also answered, that's a good question for you then to bring in MCSC if you want to have a conversation around that. And I understand you want to have that. There is one final question: with TSOs continue to consider 24 scenarios, even on a 15-minute basis? Is that question clear for you, Reinhard? Are you able to give a response to that?
Yeah, I think it was, we actually also mentioned it already, that even in a 15-minute MTU on an ESTAC basis, the capacity calculation will stay on 24 hours. And I guess this is meant with 24 scenarios, right? So that would be my interpretation. And the output then of the capacity calculation process would basically mimic the same values for the 4 quarters of a given hour. but there would not be any variation within the hour in terms of level of cross-zone capacities.
Yeah. Okay. Then we have covered all the questions regarding events hybrid coupling already. Do you?
I think we close this topic and go to the next.
Maybe before closing, I think there were some other slides. I'm not sure you're gonna go through them, but for the spike,
yes.
On our side, we haven't seen yet any advanced hybrid coupling domain, if I'm not wrong, even if the spike was done, or at least the first step of the spike. Is it something that is foreseen to be released soon to the market? Yeah, I mean, we are 9 months from the implementation go live, and for us, there's going to be an important need for tooling update, and we need to see those flow-based domains as soon as possible.
Now clear. If we maybe jump to slide 21, Maria, with the timeline. Indeed, so spike-like run was performed, and we had also agreed that we would not publish those results because they are, experimental in the sense that validation tooling and NRAW is not ready. We are currently performing spike-like run number 2, and for that one, we do intend to publish the domains later this year. So those will be put on the Java website, not on the publication tool, but on the Java website for you all to download and then start working with. And in that, sorry, was there another comment?
Yeah, well, the fact that this is experimental and no validation was performed, I think we can accept those disclaimers and still see the data. We would be completely, I mean, on my side, I would completely appreciate to see the domains, even if it's experimental, because I know I can still derive something from it. In particular, we never seen PTDF values for those external borders, and the fact that there is validation or no validation, it won't change the values of those PTDF. So I think it would still be appreciated if this spike number 1 was published.
Okay, I think we can take this back with us and see if it's really just the raw data without any associated documentation, etc. Because you also note from the timeline that after spike-like run 2 will have also a report with some analysis on some KPIs on the results of spike-like run 2 with a bit of explanation. And we had agreed to not do this for spike-like run 1, but if really just the raw data in terms of PTDFs and ROMs, etc., is sufficient without any documentation, then we can take this back and see that we can put this on the Java website.
In terms of next steps, we agreed before that after the spike-like run 2, the first one that we are going with the full process, all the steps, that we would sit together to identify how to select remaining business days, and because we build a gradual, it's a gradual build-up to select the business days. If I remember well, that it would be around mid-November. I see it also here on the planning that we are ready with spike run 2. So we will then set up a line with Celi on a timing for having a call together with you. I also see that we have report 1 coming end of November. So I just wanted expectations when we sit together. It is for selecting the business days. The report will then be published later on online. But maybe, if there is something that can already be shown Is that, do you think that's feasible, Rainer, to already show something around with the selected business days, what that we learn from it, or would it be too soon?
Yeah, it depends. The selection of business days was also more driven by a diverse set of scenarios in terms of, excuse me, PV, wind, import-export situations, etc. So from my perspective, it would not be strictly needed to define the set of business days for Sparklet 1, 3, and 4 to have the results from AHC, because to then make quickly, more or less, even within a week, a feedback loop to say, okay, well, we should look at these and that days is probably too short in either case, I would imagine. So for me, I would stick to the timing that mid-November we discuss the business days for Sparklet 1, 3, and 4, also because we need to start Sparklet 1, 3 then very soon after, and have the report then towards the end of November published, with some analysis around Sparklet 1 number 2.
And in order to make then that decision on selecting the next business days, is there an input that you would need from market party side that needs to be prepared by that call?
Yeah, if maybe more a confirmation, if the criteria that we had set up for the selection of business days for Sparklet 1 and 2, whether those still hold or whether you have now different ideas on which business days to select. This would be helpful because we intend to come with a proposal with business days, and for now they will be based on the criteria we had for Sparklet 1 and 2. But if those have changed, then that would be helpful for us to know. I would say beginning of November at the latest.
What we can do is we can recirculate the criteria that we have been agreeing on in the past that we will then be using to make a proposal. And then if you could then indeed do the double check if there is any major change needed, then we can already integrate that in our proposal by beginning of November then. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think most of the points on the roadmap here we also mentioned in the meantime, and unless there are further questions, we could maybe then move on.
Question here.
Yeah, okay.
Good morning. That's more of a philosophical question. So we are, today it's I think 11th of October 24. So we are 6 years from a 65% renewables system. Are there any plans to change the GLSK, which, as I understand, are mostly thermal and occasionally hydro plants? So already right now, how do you calculate the GLSK on a day when prices are zero everywhere in Europe?
So the GLSK is an input that's provided by every TSO, and of course the different power systems, even in Central Europe and the core region, are vastly different in terms of generation portfolio overall, and those are reflected in the individual GLSKs. But I would expect and imagine that of course, when your fleet of thermal plants, like you depict, goes down, then they will not even be in the network model anymore, so they couldn't even be a GLSK node, so you have to see where else to shift, or to what else to shift with. So I think this will happen naturally, I would say. Yeah.
But right now, do you already take into account wind turn down or batteries or?
That depends again on the TSO and then on the national requirements and laws regarding curtailment of renewables, etc. If you have fixed feed-in, then there's no point in in having that in the GLSK because it will by no means react to market signals. But if you do have that, then of course I would imagine it to be part. But since this is different by member states, by TSO, this also is reflected differently in the different GLSKs.
And we have an update on the methodology.
Update of the, you mean the explanation or?
The GSK methodology.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we request that too because we have an old explanatory document on the GSK that is I think from 17.
Yes.
And it seems that things have changed in the meantime from what we hear today, right? So I think it would be great to have an update.
Yeah, I think you get to some absurd things like it's related to the lack of Switzerland, I understand. But if you look at the most constraining CNEC at the French-German border, it's mostly affected by France to Poland, which I understand might be related to the fact that you still have a lot of thermal plants in Poland, but you don't have many in Germany.
Also, Poland is north, right? And while Germany is much more,
and you don't have
elongated.
Switzerland.
Yeah.
But what is exactly the request, the update of the?
So there is a document that was published a long time ago about GSK methodology per TSO, where, for example, the TSO would explain, oh, we put the nuclear, we don't put the nuclear, we put proportional to availability or to generation. And I think this is out of date nowadays.
I think, for example,
We'll check it then. At least we will be able then to say what is published, is it still correct or not?
Yes, maybe it is still up to date, but yeah, I think as an action, it would be great to see if it is still up to date, and if it's not the case, to update it, basically. Yeah.
For example, I think if I remember correctly, we had France that was moving proportionally and Belgium that was moving between min and max of the CCGTs, but there are days in which you don't have any CCGTs in Belgium.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay.
Noted.
Thank you.
And let's go to,
to move on. So for some detail on Spike-like Run 1, but I think in the end we mentioned most of those, and here we actually have some of the criteria that we mentioned for the selection of business days, actually here under the second last bullet point. So this is what was taken into account. Yeah, I think the rest we've mentioned, and I think it's okay to move on. Yeah, next is on the spike, and not just the spike-like runs for HC, but indeed the spike as it was also established back in CWE, for which, yeah, we've coined this abbreviation as the standard process for assessing impact of change in core, hence the additional C compared to CWE. And we agreed to set this up as a half-yearly process that will be executed to give you a glimpse on how the domains might change with grid reinforcements, grid developments, but also longer-term outages. And so also for here, we have developed a dashboard actually to select business days from the past that span over a wide set of different scenarios. So again, high wind, low wind, lots of PV, etc. And those can also be found in the annex of these slides. Set up now a process on how to take those historic business days and transform the grid models for those historic days into a state of the grid in the future. So about 6 months ahead, and then run the market or the capacity calculation process, including validations, and analyze the results and create a report that will be then published and shared with you all, so that you get again a feel of what developments are on the horizon and how they impact the flow-based domain. So the way the business day association is basically done. So we have we look back into the last 6 months, define historic days out of that, and then plan or then implement the expected changes in the 6 months that follow after the spike-like results are done. So there's a bit of shift in timing always to be included. And reflect the grid state that is expected during that period, and by that give you a good quantitative assessment of what it would mean for the flow-based domain. If we move on the the rough process steps on our end are with what we call a spike task force, so a dedicated team that works on this, with preparing the selected business days, align also with the vendors, etc., to support the execution of the runs. Coreso is the merging entity, prepares then the CGMs for those future states. And then this team is also responsible for the publication of results. We have then the Spike RCC, which is the RCCs coordinating the execution of the run in a study environment. Again, Coreso in charge of CGM preparation and quality checks, also like if we had them in the operational process. And the TSOs are responsible for the adaptation of the CGMs initially, so putting in potentially additional lines, outages, etc. Input data gathering, so mostly then on connects. So if new connects or contingencies form through grid development, that those will be reflected as well. And then in the DAC, the capacity calculation process in particular, then execute the validation stage. And yeah, for this very first spike-like run, we have the timings also indicated here, that it's the plan that by end of November, so much coinciding with the spike-like run for AHC, but please keep those two separate. Also end of November would then be the time for when we intend to publish the results of the first spike-like, or the first spike run, pardon me, that would now look into the grid developments in the first half year of 2025. Any questions or reflections in the room?
Yes, please.
Yes. Do I understand it correctly that you will do this twice a year, regardless of whether there are any planned outages or grid changes?
So you think if we execute the process, even if there is nothing in terms of planned outages? Yes. Yeah. So this was also the commitment we gave to do this twice a year. And but to be honest, there is always changes in such a large grid as core. You will always find a longer term outage or a major grid development that will take place in the next 6 months, I'm sure.
So for example, right now you do already know the outages in Q2 next year.
The long-term planned ones, yes, indeed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I didn't mean to be nasty, but it follows. So why are they not published on RTE?
Pardon me, sorry, why are they not?
Sorry, it didn't mean to be nasty, but it will turn out that. So why are they not published on RTE? If you do already know the outages for Q1 and Q2 next year, why is there nothing on the RTE website for 2025?
On any TSO.
Or any TSO, but
we always see.
I could not answer to this. We only to execute the capacity calculation process for the spike run, and this is where this information is processed, but this does not have a link to where and when planned outages are being published. So this is purely to assess the impact on the flow-based domain.
We know it's a recurrent request from your side, but what we can do only here is take the grid modeling outlook, because that is what's being created in ENTSO-E context. It's using a projection of these outages. During October, the grid model is made, and then this is also a basis for doing a long-term capacity calculation, this input. We are using the same input to make our spike runs. And I know, and around or outside of the core context, there is Remit. There are different Remit platforms. There are maybe different practices across the TSO community on how the outages are published. We had a discussion 1.5 to 2 years ago around that, where we presented the different practices, and where we also said, yeah, we are not. It's not our responsibility as a core CCR to to harmonize any pan-European setting regarding Remit. As far as we know, TSOs are doing it according to the legal framework. And then my understanding is that the legal framework allows to use different platforms. Maybe it's not specific in terms of what is the scope that has to be taken into account, if it's only cross-border or internal outages. But this is not a discussion we can solve from a CCR perspective. I believe that this discussion, your point, is more discussion around Remit rules and around how this is being followed up.
Yeah. I mean, that's always the excuse we hear, but the problem is that those discussion doesn't happen anywhere else. So I would be happy to that this is happening at a more pan-European level, but it doesn't happen. So
that you can bring it then to MESC, I would say, if there is a need to discuss around the Remit. I have to admit, I'm not fully into the details of Remit evolutions. Discussions are taking place, but I can imagine that if it's around the network code, and it's important for you, that you do have the opportunity to bring it at an European stakeholder level.
That also defeats the purpose of the spike, because if we get a spike, say without Albertville on Dissone, then which is the most for Q2 2025, then we'll say, okay, maybe we have learned something. If we get a spike with Albertville on Dissone, what do we conclude? That you haven't put it in because RT has not told you, but it will be indeed out, and therefore we cannot do anything with the spike, or the line indeed is going to be on the grid in Q2 2025. And by the way, on around the 10th of December, RT will publish it. Will publish the list of outages. So the timing is not ideal.
Yeah, Luboš,
yeah, Reinhard, the planning synchronous connection on the border between Poland and Lithuania, this was considered in, because it's also on the list of AHC borders presented before.
Yeah. So indeed, we also double checked that this would have an impact on the AHC implementation. Unfortunately, PSE was able to confirm that no, it won't. It will stay a virtual hub, but of course, physically it will change from a back-to-back DC converter today to an AC line. So yeah, this is all planned and taken into the process to be considered. And I believe it's early February when the synchronization is expected to take place, right? So it would fall right under the time of this spike outlook, indeed. Yeah. But since it doesn't have an outage associated with it, or or a grid reinforcement, because in the end, it's so two things: an external border and also the capacity on the Polish-Lithuanian border is not going to change drastically. It should not have a big impact here. Yeah. And I think there was another hand up earlier, but I guess it was lowered.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thanks. Last slide on Spike. Individual validation. The slide from Marketplace, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. So maybe a bit related to what we discussed a bit previously, but market participants wanted to start a general discussion that is stemming from exceptional events that occurred on the French eastern border, like mostly between March and May 2024. And this a bit showed, like the whole event process a bit showed a lack of visibility for market participants on the issue, which is leading to a general discussion for now on good practice in terms of communication and justification for IVAs in general. So from that discussion that we also want to have with you, and we understand that something can't be perhaps answered into that fora, but maybe elsewhere, market participants noted some needs. So our first need was to improve communication. So during those exceptional events, communication was not very fluent. So maybe the idea was to be like trying to find good practices, maybe in core, to improve that communication. So having retrospective summaries of the main event, but maybe also have perhaps a deadline for TSOs to communicate on such event with in-depth explanation about the event to market participants, because again, I'm referring to that event, but it could happen in other for other borders elsewhere and later on. But basically, it took about 2 months to really have a good communication on this for market participants, which is quite a long time. So maybe it'd be good to have a discussion on what is possible to be done on a shorter time for TSO to communicate on such events, so market participants to have a better view on this. Then there was also a point on having a greater clarity on justification for IVA. So IVA's justification could be perhaps improved when we are in like long-lasting events. So if there is usage of IVAs during multiple days, perhaps it's unclear why it's used, and there could be made an effort. The market participants are not asking for very strong justification for every time, but maybe when there is a sustained time of usage of IVAs, to have perhaps a more in-depth justification, notably because their reason might change several times, and just market participants can get lost and might be difficult to understand.
It's okay if we already have a feedback on the first 2 points. I see also that Fredrik, we have indeed a colleague from RT present in the call, and I think he wants to react on the first bullet point already.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Zeli, for providing this feedback, and I understand your need of, I would say, a better communication on what happened. I would say in exceptional events such as we face this year with the French eastern borders. What I can say now is, I mean, we are at RT. We are still working on improving this process. I mean, the situation this year was very challenging for us, for RT, in terms of system operations. I mean, we tried to explain it, but heavy compulsory maintenances and unplanned outages combined with historically high exports have made this year, and in particular the period between March and May, very challenging. But I don't know. I think it's important for RT to remind every time that we are trying to find the right balance between the required grid maintenance and increasing need of expansion of grid development on one side, and on the other side, the maximization of cross-border capacities for the market. And for me, the historically high exports in 2024 was quite surprising, and the impacts on our grid were quite surprising, especially in Mars. And right away at RTE, we tried to avoid that such a situation happen another time. So we try to be as transparent as possible, and to provide upfront communication through JAO, especially. We explain what we have why we had to perform some exceptional limitations, and what is the period we foreseen to be difficult. For instance, the period from August to September has been identified by RT as tense due to high stakes planned outages and expectations of massive exports again. We try to communicate with the strategy to face this period, how we improve our internal process, and to I don't know, for instance, to applying limitations only when necessary, of course, and always starting by the border closest to the grid. But as we mention every time, I would say it's a regional issue. It's not only a core issue. It's an issue with all eastern borders. So that's why it makes us difficult with many with different capacity calculation, different CCRs to manage to do it. Maybe in the future with the CE region, we will have a better effect. We will be able to be more effective and more clear on what we are performing at the moment. But yeah, and eventually, I mean, the summer period was not as tense as foreseen, especially due to imports from Switzerland, import situation from Switzerland, that balancing our grid constraints close to the Italian border. But yeah, my point is we are still working on improving our internal process on one side, and also the communication. So I'm quite open to proposition to do it. We did it through JAO website. If you need more reporting, more close to the I would say to the limitations we face, or if you need more, I would say, upfront communication, please make it clear, and we can discuss to improve this process, because it's really important for us that we provide the best visibility for the market.
Thank you, Frederick. Maybe, but Célie, I think the discussion is not really only related to French.
Exactly. But that's
more a core.
That's the main example.
More general thing, I think, and I think the request is rather about, can core TSOs think about a way of communicating and streamlining the communication in these kind of events, because they could occur anywhere, of course.
Yes, indeed. And thank you very much. And also, of course, market participants really appreciate the efforts that you are doing. And also on the side that you are open to discuss also with market participants, with RTA. So it's really good. Thank you very much for that in-depth explanation as well. But indeed, as Ruud was saying, it was more like, because as you were also saying, it's such an exceptional event, maybe we could take back some good practices from it, more as a general level, at the core level, let's say, to take a good feedback from what happened, and to see if there is a good practice to implement, then to work on that. So yeah, I don't know if you have a other point, or if market participants wants to add on something.
Yeah. Something that has been discussed in many guises. Can you publish the entire grid, at least in end state?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Because first, I was the person who at the beginning asked, can you publish non-pre-solved? And I thought that if you publish non-pre-solved, you have the entire grid. And that works well for Belgium and the Netherlands, you have almost the entire grid. But for RTE, if you take the line that Recta worked in the second part of Q2, which was Crescent-Bulba, that one started existing for the market participants, I think in February, in June.
While we could have seen the constraints already in March when the situation unfolded. And I think that comes back to it's an even larger request here, what you're doing, Federico, but we were just asking for the MNEC to be published because that would be already a bit more visibility. Like eventually this line was an MNEC, but yeah, the best thing would be to have all the branches being published, even if they are not part of CNEC, and so that at least we can see straight away. We don't need to wait a month for RT to communicate to tell us that there are problems there.
But then the elements in the grid that are not relevant for capacity calculation are then not relevant for capacity calculation. I understand that you want to have a quicker feedback loop when a change is made into the list of elements that are relevant for capacity calculation, which in this case indeed happened. The list of connects is something dynamic. I think that's a good feedback that we can take. Okay, we must make sure that when this list is updated, that we do the communication with the market message on Java around it.
It's more to anticipate the update. Like if we were to see the MNEC or even the end state CVs, we would be able to see, oh, there is some very tense situation on those branches. They are about to be put into they are about to be put in as CNEC. So like for us, we need to be able to anticipate what are gonna be those new CNECs in the future. And the best way for us is to have more observability on the network, on the part that we don't see effectively.
Even if you look at this specific case, I think that the IVAs started in March and then they became extreme on the 5th of April. And for 2 months, they were applied to Vigensdorf. So we were, at least on our side, we were all thinking it's a French-German problem.
It was not. It was just a proxy for this Crescent-Bulba.
It was just a proxy for Crescent-Bulba. So we got to some wrong conclusions on the French-Italian and the French-Swiss NTC.
But that's a good feedback because indeed, in a daily publication, when there is IFA applied, there is a series of information that is attached to it. At one hand, it's the market circumstances, which corner of the flow-based domain. On the other hand, it should indeed be clear which is the congested line. So we have already this structure in place, and maybe that's a feedback from here that it took maybe too much time before that became visible, and that's then a learning point for us. But I think there is something in between, just publish all the information in the grid versus explain us what is changing and why it is changing, and that we can help to explain what is changing, how it is changing, that we can look into the quality of the IFA reporting, because this is the direct feedback loop on a daily basis.
It's always too slow, right? Like the fact that I'm not sure what is the reluctance of publishing those data because they are calculated, those data. And on our side, we would not need to wait for weeks for TSO to prepare those communications or to refine their IVA justification. That would be like crystal clear in the data that the RT has a problem on this Crescent-Bulba and needs to put some IVA. I think I don't understand why there is a reluctance to do that, to publish those additional branches. It might not be the whole entire network, but at least something that is close to the core borders. Like we're not asking for some line in Brittany eventually, but what is the blocker here? You're already publishing tons of information on the CNECs. So what is?
Yeah, publishes everything. So
yeah.
And I think that moreover, the explanation, apart from the fact that our times, I think they are faster than waiting for a qualitative explanation. So maybe our explanation is wrong. Next time we'll build on it, but we'll try and build a model, not a qualitative explanation. But also, you can get to the same result with IBAs or with targeted CNECs, which is what you have done from end of May onwards. So if you put in an extra CNEC as you did, you're right, at the beginning of June, you'll get to the same result, but you will not have to provide an explanation because it's not an exceptional situation. So imagine that you come back today and you put a line which is very sensitive to it, but it's at the border, I don't know, with Spain, let's say. How can we see that how can we see it coming?
I have no full answer to that, but I understand your assumption is that there is a list of, you can call it the monitored network elements. We will take it back with us. I will check if indeed that assumption is correct, that there is this list existing, and that this is giving signals around what to anticipate.
I mean, the worst thing is that they used to be published, and they've been removed from the publication. So eventually, they've been removed in February. So eventually, this Crestin Bilbao was part of the MNEC list from the beginning. They would not have removed it from the publication. We would have seen it. And yeah, for us, I think we can be much more quick by analyzing the data than relying on some qualitative comments from the TSO. So that's, I guess, that's the point. And given this was published before, I don't see why it cannot be reinstantiated.
That you make this link clear in your usage of the MNEX, because for us that wasn't clear, and we indeed had a conversation in the past where the need was, we don't know if it's a CNEC or not that is being published. Yeah. And then we came to the conclusion, okay, we'll then make sure that we only publish the CNECs to avoid confusion and be clean with respect to the legal requirement. So it's good that you now point out that this is information that you based yourself on to anticipate congestion. And we need to check if that assumption indeed holds, because I don't know if every core TSO is having a list of MNECs or not. But we'll take that question with us to reflect upon.
And I would go even further that the Frederico approach, which is not even MNEC, the whole network, right? And,
having the list of stable
end state, and because for us, it will really help us in our analytical capabilities to have those informations.
I'll give you an example. Maybe we are not the most advanced users, but when you start having these problems, then you get a lot of questions and say, is it due to high run-of-river in Switzerland? Is it due to the fact that Catenom is out? Is it due to the fact that there are no CCGTs running? Sort of reasonable questions. And if you can observe the grid only in the specific situation when these constraints happen, you'll have to wait an entire lifetime before you have built enough points for your regression or whatever you use. If you had 6 months, 1 year of flows, then you can see, the flow on this line is somehow correlated to either in Switzerland, or it's somehow correlated to Catenom, or it's somehow correlated to whatever. And nowadays, with AI, you can find correlations with anything, but you need data, whereas this is sensor data. You observe it only when it's binding.
Yeah, but I think point is taken.
I'd like to make sure that it is not a question to TSOs, but actually noted as an actual request. Like it's very strong. It's not just checking what different TSOs are doing. It's more a request to have the full grid published. and then a request for justification if this is not done.
And maybe that is because I'm feeling that the answer will be this is no legal requirement, right? It's true, it's not legal requirement to be published that these things. But I think we should overcome in the spirit of collaboration on market parties between and TSOs the fact that the legal requirements are eventually not enough, right? Is like the goal is that the market participants have more capabilities of explaining the future of forcing situations. And I think the argument of doing the strict legal minimum is not the good attitude somehow. Because I feel that's going to be the answer to that request, is that this is not part of the legal requirement. But I think TSO should strive doing more than legal requirements.
Which we are with the spike analysis.
Yeah.
So I think it's not fair to say that we are insensitive to your request. And I believe that over the course of the last 7-8 years, also starting of CWE, we've also always maintained this dialogue and try to find the right balance. Up to us also to explain if there are limitations, what they are. Is the request for you, Reinhard, clear enough with respect to the whole grid model that is used in capacity calculation?
Yeah, well, on the one hand, we do publish the static grid model twice a year, and that, of course, should always see in conjunction with the daily publication of flow-based data. But it's also not correct that the entire grid is even in our internal flow-based data. We, in the flow-based capacity calculation, you only monitor those elements that go in as connects and those as MNECs, and everything else is not monitored. There's also, just to set the expectations right, that there is not the whole grid modeled for every TSO in the full flow-based computation. In the CGM, yes, but it doesn't mean that all the computation steps like FRF, FEOF, etc., that those are all, and all PTDFs, that they are all there for all network elements. That's certainly not the case. But yeah, we can take the question with us and come back during next CG. I think that's the way it's noted now.
Given the time, I would like to go to the last 2 points, Zeli.
So, Steve, you touched upon REMIT just before as well, but some discussions that stem from those exceptional events as well, where the fact that there are like discrepancies on REMIT publications. So the idea was maybe to see if there was a possibility maybe within core to agree on some consistency on REMIT publication. I know you explained it well, that it's probably not here to talk about REMIT as well, but we wanted to bring that forward. And then on this last point, which is a bit maybe not very clear there, but to improve maybe analysis. So maybe to have a better view on the impact on constraints, even though they are only on a specific border, to still have the TSO to have a broader view. And even though the constraint is applied on border A, what's happening on border B and C? You see what I mean? Like there, like for this event, I think there was a focus really on the eastern border, but like first on Italian border, and then we saw that there was like actually quite big impacts on German border or Belgian border. So it could be good to anticipate a bit better on those analyses. So it could like actually be good for everyone, just not market participants, but also TSOs, regulators, etc. So that's a bit the idea, to maybe have that as a good practice. The next time such things happen, to just be sure to communicate well all together and have a more in-depth analysis maybe on other borders, for example. So I don't know if you want to add something or.
But I see 3 categories of feedback. I think improved analysis, improved communication, that kind of goes together. in explaining what happens, and that is valuable for everyone, whether it is within the TSO community or towards yourself. And I think that's a fair point. Let's make also the feedback loop on our side on that. We will do that. The second point is on what level of information is being published as part of our capacity calculation process. So that's the thing with the MNEX and what is being published around the IRA justification. So as said, we will also come back to that. On the remit itself, I think we will there continue to iterate around in circles. So just to manage expectations, it's also difficult to grasp what
maybe we could come with like specific example, have a discussion within market participants and see a bit what is the way forward regarding remit consistency on publications for sure. I understand as you were talking that that was not necessarily the place to discuss about it, even though we perhaps think it could be like some consistency already within core, some kind of like agreement on some points. I don't know.
I think that it is just not true that there is no link like for the outage, because the remit says that you should publish outage if they have impact on capacities. Where capacities are calculated, they are calculated in the scope of the core programs, or for some other CCRs. But let's say for the core programs, so the best place to see whether an outage is impactful or not impactful is within the core flow-based calculation. That's one point. And we see that TSOs have very various approach on that point. I just as an example, we contacted recently Transnet. They have never published any internal outages, and they are saying that their outages don't have any impact on the flow-based domains. Yet we do see Transnet critical branches on the flow-based domain. So that there is a link between what is in the flow-based and what outage shall be published. It seems just so logical. And also I think TSOs need to acknowledge that they cannot, the fact that an outage has an impact or no impact next month is very difficult to say, because the renewables are not known, things are very uncertain. So they are taking a risk of not publishing them, being in a legal breach somehow, because maybe that in 1 month the renewable situation will make them impactful or not make them impactful. So I think they should take a much more conservative approach in publishing more of those outages than less, because who knows what's going to happen next year. We've seen with RTE, they were completely unable to foresee that situation as of February, and that unfolded in March. So that the point of TSO are capable of knowing what is impactful or not impactful has been proven wrong somehow. So in that sense, publishing more outage and being on the safe side of the line versus remit, I think is a very needed action from TSOs. And the fact that there is also a link between outage and capacity calculation is just obvious from the fact that there are critical branches, and outage next to those critical branches will affect those critical branches.
These outages in RT, many times it's been said that they are statutory outages or some kind of 10-year inspection or something like this. So it must be known years in advance, or the absurd situation of the other side of Vigensdorf, where Amprion didn't publish anything until April in an obscure part of EX, But then on their Twitter, they say, "Oh, we are replacing the line. This is our when it's going to happen, and this is when the motorway is going to be closed."
The way how you phrase it, for me, makes then sense, because then we take the angle, what are the criteria applied in order to say it's relevant or not for capacity calculation, and that I agree that we can look into. But when it would go further and it's about other gray zone of interpretation and which platforms to use.
Yeah.
So
I don't think we're talking about platform here, right? It's really what is published
about understanding
and
how.
Yeah.
Because it's probably open for interpretation.
There's also maybe there's somebody online that wanted to add. Johan?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add to this point because you can point to many specific examples, in particular for like last year. For example, the first RTE meeting kind of explaining what was going on in May. They had a slide of kind of outages, right? And a lot of these outages were, so just by putting these outages on the slide, it implies it's market impactful, right? Number one. And then the contradictory point is that, for example, the Campresso PST, that was out for, most of the summer until the end of July. And this was actually never published. Even after this call, it was never published. So who truly knows if that outage end date did change? And yeah, you can also look at next year, for example, on ENTSO-E, you have some outages published for France Swiss. But I assume, well, when we look at the RTE, data, this is not there either. But yeah, and generally this whole kind of, I don't want to pick on RTE, but yeah, this whole year, all of the outages were reported quite late.
Let's agree the following. You've mentioned a few examples. If you can consolidate them, bring us that list, then we can have indeed the conversation on our side. What are the criteria we are applying, and where could be improvements?
Close this topic then. We have extended into the lunchtime. Therefore, I propose to extend lunch for 15 minutes so that we resume at 1:30. Is that okay for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then lunch and see you back at 1:30.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Enjoy your lunch. Have a good remaining day. Bye.